Relax. You're here now. And have a good holiday. I hope your Christmas is very much so delightful. Greetings, wandering lights. Welcome to my venue. Come. Don't be shy now. Just shuffle in and take a seat, for this is gonna be good. I've got complimentary frosted sprinkle sweets, and many other delights if you fancy. But I won't keep you waiting here for too long. I know why you're here, so allow me to take it away. Christmas. It's a wonderful notion of lights giving each other gifts, branded festivities that bring joy to the Grand Square, and of course, the most important, or well, my favorite part, the frostlit crystals, which are said to mark Christmas's beginnings. But this is simply the overview of a Lumia Christmas. Let's relive the tales truly dictating the art of a Lumiere Christmas, with this first story being about a light who is going to receive the most spectacular final Christmas. Book number 1, Fenrir's Last Frosting, A Christmas Tale of Lumia. Fenrir woke before dawn, long before the first lights wandered towards the Grand Square to hang ribbons or light the great tree. Age had turned his soft glow into a muted gold that flickered when he stood up too quickly. He bundled himself inside of a simple shawl and stepped outside, breathing in the sharp, cool air of late fall. He could already feel it. This would be his last Christmas. Lumia shimmered with anticipation. Wisps drifted hazily between homes, leaving faint spirals of luminescence in their wake. Several lights were already laughing near the bakery, carrying baskets of treats for the day's feast. Fenrir smiled at them, though the curve of his lips held a quiet sadness. It had been many years since he'd seen a true frosting, not the light sputtered of frostlit crystals that sometimes drifted by chance, but the deep blanket of icy blue that old tales called a full frosting. When Lumia transformed into a crystalline wonderland, he had always hoped to witness just one more. Just one. Before his glow finally dimmed, Fenrir made his way to the Shi Temple as the sky brightened. The temple's stone pillars hummed with quiet reverence, and ribbons of light floated between them like slow-moving comets. He entered and knelt before the offering basin, placing a small wooden figure inside, a simple carving of a tree, its branches raised as if longing for frost. He bowed his head.
Cerik,
He whispered.
I ask for nothing but a moment of beauty, a final frosting from my last Christmas in Lumia. That is all.
He didn't expect an answer. Prayers were gifts, not bargains. Still, something stirred in the air, a faint tremble of light, as if the world had paused for a slight heartbeat. Fenrir breathed out, stood, and left the temple behind. High above the realm, Cerik watched. He felt the quiet weight of Fenrir's wish, gentle, sincere, without the grasping edge so many hopes carried. It flickered with humility, and something else, a soft echo in the weave of Lumia's energy, as if the realm had itself leaned towards the wish. And Cerik sensed it. A shining, a tiny spear of pure creation drifting across the pale waste, barely visible to mortal eyes, but blazing with potential to one of divine status. It pulsed faintly, blue, white, lilac-like, not an idea, yet spoken. Cerik followed its glow. The pale waste lay barren beneath him, endless white stone cracked by ages of stillness. The shining bobbed there, hovering just above the surface as if waiting. Cerik approached it and cupped it gently into his hands. Warmth surged through his fingers, not heat, but possibility. the raw spark of creation enough to shape weather, or sculpt sky, or gift a miracle. He closed his fingers around the spear. It pulsed once, recognizing his touch. "For Fenro," he murmured. The shining dissolved into him like a breath of starlight. Christmas dawned across Lumia in bright, joyful swells. The great tree in the grand square was draped in garlands of soft glow ribbon. Wisps darted among its branches, curling like curious kittens of light. Lights bustled between stalls, singing glow carols and exchanging gifts wrapped in shimmering leaf paper. Fenro arrived slowly, leaning on a carved cane, and settled onto a bench near the center of the square. His glow flickered, but his eyes shone with peace. He watched children chase wisps, listened to his steady hum of celebration, and held a warm cup of spiced nectar between his hands. Then the sky shifted. It was subtle at first, a cool hush, tremoring softness. A ripple moved across Lumia's firmament, tinting its pale blue. Fenro looked up. A single frost-lit crystal drifted down, hexagonal and shining, landing on the back of his hand. It felt soft, cool. It lingered for a heartbeat before the warmth of his glow melted it into a tiny droplet of light. And then many more began to fall. Dozens? Hundreds? A cascade. Lights gasped as the entire sky blossomed into a brilliant frosting. Crystals drifted like feathers, each one glowing faintly from within. The grand square glittered. The great tree reflected the falling frost with dazzling brilliance. Wisps spun in spirals, leaving shimmering trails through the gentle snowfall. Fenro's breath caught. His eyes softened, his shoulders relaxed. Wonder washed over him, pure and overwhelming.
This,
he whispered, voice trembling.
this is beautiful.
He leaned back, letting the frost settle around him in soft azure layers. The world blurred into crystalline glow as every light in the square stared upward in awe. Fenro's glow dimmed and dimmed until it flickered like a candle, ready to rest. A final frostlit crystal touched his cheek. He smiled. And with that smile still warm on his face, he quietly drifted into peace. The next morning, the frostlit crystals that covered the grand square had melted everywhere except the small patch where Fenro had rested. Those remained shimmering lightly for several days, as if still holding a vigil. Some say Cerik left them there, a gentle farewell. Others say the frost itself wished to linger with him a little longer, and every Christmas afterward, when the first wisp curled through the branches of the great tree, the lights told the story of Fenro and the final frosting, a tale of beauty granted to a humble heart, a tale that glowed softly through Lumia for generations. As sentimental as that was, do not fret. Not all stories have to be heartwarmingly bittersweet. This next story focuses on the journey of a child's wits and caring heart. Book number 2, A Present for the One Who Gives. Christmas in Lumia wrapped itself around the grand square like a warm embrace. Lanterns shimmered among high branches, ribbons rustled with every passing wing beat, and wisps drifted lazily through the air as if they too were part of the celebration. Lights hurried between market stalls, carrying presents tucked under their arm or tied to belts with determined knots. Near the base of the towering great tree, 2 children crouched inside a nest of evergreen branches, whispering intensely. "Everybody gets something," Ellie said, hugging her knees. "Everyone except, well, Cerik." Tora scrunched his eyebrows. "He's a goddess, doesn't he? Like, have everything?" Ellie shook her head sharply. "That's not the point. Nobody gives him anything. That feels wrong." Tora imagined Cerik standing all alone on Christmas, While everyone else traded gifts, the idea hit harder than expected. So, should we fix it? We should, Ellie said, and that settled it. Their plan took shape rather quickly. Their execution was far from graceful. The tailor at the corner stall donated scraps of winter fabric. The ribbon maker offered leftover trimmings. The shopkeeper, who sold several festival trinkets, handed them 2 mismatched buttons for charm. A baker gave them a little tin box for wrapping, smiling as though he knew a secret he wasn't allowed to say out loud. They worked deep into the evening at Tora's home, their small hands clumsy but determined. Thread tangled, needles dropped. One glove ended up slightly longer than the other, but when they finished, the pair looked warm, sturdy, and impossibly earnest, the kind of gift that could only be made by children trying their very hardest. By Christmas morning, Lumia was alive and humming. Lights filled the square in cheerful waves, the great tree glowing with color. Ellie and Tora wove through the crowd, carrying the tin between them, as if it was a held, fragile miracle. Adults paused.
What a lovely box. A prayer offering? For the Shi Temple, yes? You two are very dedicated.
When Ellie corrected them, soft but firm, "It's a present for Cerik," the adults blinked in surprise. Some smiled awkwardly. Others chuckled as if unsure whether the children were being honorable or audacious. Ellie and Tora pressed onward. Inside the Shi Temple, the air was calmer, cooler, and filled with the faint scent of incense. Cerik stood near a tall mirror, tugging nervously at the sleeves of his formal coat. He looked dignified, if one ignored the subtle tremor in his wings, and the muttered pep talk looping under his breath.
Temple approached him. Goddess, 2 children are here, requesting an audience.
Cerik blinked. Children? Children he could manage, he hoped. Ellie and Tora stepped forward, awkwardly, arms stiff with nerves. Cerik softened the moment he saw them. He crouched slightly to their height. "Are you two alright?" Ellie nudged Tora. Tora nudged Ellie. Neither spoke. Eventually, Ellie finally had out the tin. "We made this for you." Cerik accepted it with a care usually reserved for rare relics. When he opened the lid and saw the gloves, his expression stilled. The stitching was imperfect, the decorations were uneven, one of the thumbs leaned suspiciously sideways. They were perfect. "You made these?" Cerik asked quietly. "We thought you might get cold at the Christmas address," Tora said. "And we thought it was unfair that nobody gives you presents," Ellie added, her voice barely above a whisper. "So, now someone does." Cerik looked at the gloves, then at the children, and then something warm flickered across his features. A warmth that wasn't a divine radiance, but something gentler. More of a light. He slipped the gloves on despite the sideways thumb. They fit imperfectly, but he didn't care. "I've never been giving something like this," he murmured. "Most lights assume I don't need anything, but you saw a space and filled it. That is a rare sort of brilliance." Ellie's ears warmed. She hadn't planned for praise. She'd barely planned anything at all, but something inside her fluttered, the way tiny sparks dance just before they grow into a real light. Cerik crouched, so their eyes were leveled. "You should know something. Gifts change shape when they're given. These gloves might look simple, but they carry the intent of the giver, and that intent has weight in Lumia." He touched 2 fingers to their foreheads. Air around them rippled, faint as a breath on a glass. For a moment, Ellie and Tora felt a warmth that wasn't heat, more like being seen. "Wherever you walk," Cerik said, "let this be your reminder. Even the smallest light can add to the glow of the realm." Somewhere above, the wisp of lights drifted slower, as if listening. One spiraled around Tora before darting skyward again, leaving a trailing ribbon of bright motes behind it. The grand square murmured in delight. Ellie looked up at Cerik, then at the gloves. Do you really like them? Cerik nudged his shoulder with a gentle humor. I think they're perfect. And as Cerik returned to the plaza, wearing the gloves without a hint of irony, the lights began to notice. First, a child tugged at a parent's sleeve, and two traders paused mid-argument. Then an entire circle of festive goers fell into a hush of wonder, because something had shifted. Cerik, the one who shaped all shimmer and glow, was walking through Lumia on a winter morning, wearing handmade gloves from two small children, and somehow they made the whole celebration feel warmer. Ellie and Tora didn't need anyone to say it, but realization settled in their chests like quiet stars. Sometimes, even the brightest being in Lumia is needed to be given to. That one was rather nice. If you enjoyed the goddess's presence, this next story is sure to amaze you, as it has been documented by the goddess himself. Be sure to keep an open eye, or it may just crumble right before your very presence. Ah, Christmas in Lumia. Now that was something else. You think you've seen a festival before, but until you've seen the grand square glowing with frostlit crystals, sweet pastries out at every venue, and lights running in every direction like caffeinated gremlins, well, you haven't lived. I remember one year in particular, the year of the Great Frostlit Bake-Off. And yes, I was there, not as a goddess giving judgments or handling down decrees, but as a regular light, enjoying the chaos like everyone else. And of course, Mai came along, because naturally, if I'm going to do something fun, she has to make it at least 20 times more dramatic. We arrived in the grand square, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. Oh, the smell! Scented sugars, spiced pastries, frostlet-infused syrup. Yes, it exists, and yes, it glows, which is even more beautiful. And the faint scent of warm cocoa drifting through the air like a playful ghost. I swear, I could have eaten the entire festival on an empty stomach and still had room for more. Mai immediately brought my attention to a baking contest. Look at these amateurs, Cerik. Who puts pomegranate sprinkles on a tart? That's just asking for it. I nudged her lightly. You've never baked anything in your life. Just watch. Of course that didn't stop her from narrating everything like some high-stakes sportscaster. And there goes Cerik the baker, effortlessly dotting his cake with gummies. Will it appease the judge's wrath? Only time will tell. Oh, I totally lost that. Turns out I have no clue how to bake. But that's the thing about the bake-off. No one cared about perfection. It wasn't about winning. It was about joy. About frost-like crystals on your nose and hair. About the way the grand square felt alive with laughter and excitement. And then I saw her. A young light barely big enough to reach the table, carefully frosting a tiny tart with so much care you could almost feel it in her heart. She looked up at me, panic in her eyes because her tart was about to be judged. I smiled, just a little, and gave her a thumbs up. Sometimes the smallest encouragement is all it takes. Mai noticed too. She whispered something about the drama of tiny hearts, but I think she meant it affectionately. We didn't touch her tart. We let her finish. But we clapped the loudest when she presented it, and oh, the pride on her face! Priceless. By the end of the day, the square looked like a dream. Frostlit crystals drifting down like a delicate snowfall, glowing pastries lining every stall, lights munching, laughing, and trading bites. Mai and I found a quiet bench at the edge, sitting with half-melted frostlit cocoa and a small slice of frostlit-covered cake. I looked at her, shaking my head with a grin. You know, we could run this festival ourselves, and still, we wouldn't be able to make it this fun. I smirked. We'd break half a Lumia before noon. And yet, it would still be perfect. I said, letting frostlit glow catching my eyes. That year, I realized something. Even as a goddess, even the one who shapes lights and life in Lumia, sometimes the best magic isn't about creating grand spectacles, It's about sharing a laugh, saving memories, and watching tiny lights pour all their hearts into something that doesn't have to matter. Because that, right there, is the real sparkle of Christmas in Lumia. Now that was quite the documentation. Seriously, I'm surprised we had access to that. It really got us a bit, let's not get into that actually. Best views. A term to describe the popular means of travel throughout all of Lumia. However, there is said to be a legend. Jingles of joy as people enjoyed the soundless but beautiful night of Christmas. No one had any clue what it had been. All that we have left is this text. Book number 4. The night the ley lines sang. No notice was posted. No bells were rung in the grand square. No official ever said words out loud. Still, on Christmas Eves, lights began to look upward. It always started the same way. A pause mid-step. A glance towards the pole threading the clouds. A feeling in the wings. Subtle as the held breath. The ley lines were brighter tonight. Not louder, just expectant. By the time the last shop closed, the first racers were already gathering. They came in 2s and 3s, drifting in from alleys and rooftops, coasting down from refuse, with sleighs tucked under arms or wings, stretched loose and ready. Some had proper rigs, sleek and polished, humming softly with borrowed current. Others brought things that only barely qualified as sleighs, patch frames, mismatched runners, lanterns tied on with strings. No one laughed at those. Someone strung a ribbon between 2 ley line poles, crimson and gold, fluttering in the charged air. That was enough. Word spread faster than light. It was happening. Someone rang a bell, someone else shouted too early, a third light hissed, "Wait, wait, wait." And then the sky broke open. Wings snapped wide. Sleighs lurched forward, and the ley lines flared as dozens of lights surged into motion, and the sound rose all at once. Wind tearing past ears, metal singing against current, bells chiming wildly as the frosted crystals scattered through the air. It was frosting. Hexagonal shards bloomed and dissolved against coats and gloves, melting into cool shimmer that vanished almost as soon as it touched skin. Laughter burst out in startled gasps. Someone cursed joyfully. As their sleigh fishtailed and recovered at the last second, they raced low and fast, weaving between the poles where speed was usually regulated, usually watched. Tonight, there were no watchers, just lights and the open lanes of clouds. A racer clipped a streamer and spun, only to be steadied by mid-air by 2 others who never broke stride. Another lost a lantern entirely. It tumbled end over end into the clouds below, and the crowd howled like it was the greatest trick they'd ever seen. Rivals flew shoulder to shoulder, grinning teeth-bared grins. Old arguments were settled in bursts of speeds and near misses. New friendships sparked in sheered panic and shared recovery. And through it all, the ley lines hummed. Not the usual thrum of power, but something layered, alive. Current rose and fell as lights passed, resonating through poles and wires, carrying the rhythm of wings and runners and breath. The sound wrapped around the race, braiding with laughter and shouted warnings of the sharp joy of movement. If you listen closely, it almost sounded like music. The race had no true course. Some took the long arcs between poles, others darted tight and daring through narrow gaps. Groups split and rejoined, momentum shifting constantly. There was no finish line waiting at the end. Eventually, speed softened. Sleighs peeled away one by one. They gathered beneath a stretch of ley lines glowing warmly, the air still crackling faintly from use. Frostlight clung to scarves and hair, melting slowly as lights passed food and drinks hand to hand. Stories built up immediately, growing wilder by the sentence. Did you see? You nearly. I swear I heard. Like cold hands, bright faces, 1,000 small victories. none written down. Later, long after the last laugh faded and the last racer drifted home, the ley lines dimmed. The hum softened, then quieted entirely. By morning, there was no ribbon, no lanterns, no trace that anything had happened at all. Officials would say nothing. Records would show nothing. But every light who had been there would remember, and every Christmas Eve after, when the city grew, still, the clouds lay just right, lights would glance upward and listen, just in case the ley lines decided to sing again. Hey, is everything okay? We've only gotten through 4 stories now, and you seem so drowsy. But in awe. I'm just pulling your leg. But you seem to have enjoyed that legend. Or maybe it was real all along. Well, here's something else you may want to wrap your head around. A story about a place you are certain that exists, but simply doesn't. Book number 5. The venue that shouldn't exist. Some lights will tell you the market has always been there. Others will insist it only appears when the grand square grows quiet enough to make room for it. No records agree. Maps certainly don't. The city denies it outright. And yet, every Christmas Eve someone wakes up early and swears the space between 2 closed storefronts feels wider than it should. They say the market forms overnight. No bells, no banners, no announcements rippling down the ley lines, just a quiet rearranging of the world while everyone else sleeps. By morning, stalls lean where alleys once were. Crates become tables, blankets become counters, lanterns glow where none were hung the night before. No one claims responsibility. If you ask who started it, you'll get a dozen answers, all contradictory. A retired cook, a mechanic who hated permits, a group of kids with too much string and not enough sense. Someone shrugs and says, "It was there when I arrived." The market doesn't deal in coin, at least not comfortably. You might see a baker handing over warm bread in exchange for a cracked wing brace, being tightened just right. A toy mender accepts laughter as payment, insisting it counts. A child offers a lopsided ornament, fiercely proud, declaring it free before anyone else can argue otherwise. Nothing has a price. Everything has a story, however. The grand square feels different when the market is present. Not louder, not brighter, just closer lights linger. Conversations stretch. Strangers hold soft roosts when the wind kicks up. Then stay to talk as if they plan to do so all along. Guards pass through sometimes. They glance, they pause, they look away. Officially, there's nothing to see. Someone always worries that they don't belong there, that they brought nothing worth trading. The market has a way of correcting that gently. A seat offered, a cup pressed into cold hands, a task that just happens to need doing. By late, food is shared freely. Repairs are finished. Promises are made and met. Frostlit crumbs sparkle briefly beneath the lantern light before melting away. And then, just before dawn, the market begins to loosen. And then, stalls fold, back into crates. Lanterns dim. Blankets are lifted, shaken, gone. No signal is given. Everyone simply knows when it's time. By the time the grand square wakes fully, the space itself has turned itself clean, ordinary. Impossible. Somebody would ask that day, "Wasn't there something here?" Another light will smile and say, "You just missed it." And the next year, on Christmas Eve, when the city grows quiet enough again, the space between 2 buildings may widen. If you're lucky, you may be there when it happens. A store that doesn't take currency, but yet exists only on certain occasions? That sounds like a bunch of beliefy to me, but in the end of the day, it's just a legend. However, let's skip that part, and let's get into something different. We have to document this one for a plethora of reasons, and if I'm honest, Don't let anyone find out that I told you this, but here's another story of Cerik's anecdotes as a workaholic goddess. Book number 7. Cerik and the Empty Schedule. Cerik holds silence, not the usual hum of the ley lines, the chatter of lights, or the faint buzz of the grand square. Just silence. He blinked, stretched, and then frowned. Wait, this is it? No reports, no meetings, no petitions, no urgent crisis. No flashing lights on his notifications, nothing. Just absolutely nothing. Impossible. He muttered, pacing in his room. Someone must have. He stopped mid-step. The calendar on the wall glimmered faintly in the morning. Christmas Eve. Empty. Every slot blank. Cerik pinched the bridge of his nose. Well, maybe this is nice? Maybe. He tested it carefully. He summoned a small orb. It hovered above his hands. No alarms, no complaints, no panic lights asking what it meant for the realm. Nice indeed. Out of the window, Lumia sparkled. Cross-lit crystals drifted lazily by the morning light. The grand square hummed softly with early steerings, lights rushing to their favorite vendors, carrying gifts, laughing, wings brushing along the cloud walks of ley lines. Cerik stepped into his vesture. He paused. He could fly anywhere, do whatever.
Well, this could be catastrophic,
he said, grinning.
or the most magnificent day I've ever lived.
He started with small, absurd attempts at normal light activities. At a grand square bakery stall, he inspected donuts like a very picky customer.
Do these come with a blessing?
He asked the baker, who barely glanced at him. The lights were too busy laughing, trading cookies, and exchanging gifts to notice a goddess in their midst. Cerik tried shopping, but kept accidentally running in circles trying to find anything he would remotely need.
Maybe a jacket. Things get super cold during this time. Wait, no. I have too many already.
This process persisted as Cerik ended up leaving empty-handed, though with a burger to appease its efforts.
Well, it's the thought that counts,
he muttered, taking a bite of his burger and gleaming at the taste. By afternoon, Cerik was hovering above the ley lines, watching light streak past on sleek suds, weaving between poles, laughter spilling over like wind. I kinda like this, he admitted, voice carrying over the clouds. No positions, no judgments, no schedules, just this. He lingered long enough to help a light who had clipped a lantern string mid-flight. Quick, discreet, helpful, but without drawing attention. As evening fell, the grand square glowed with Christmas lights and frost-lit shards floating lazily in the air. Cerik descended into the middle of the city, completely unnoticed. He watched lights exchange gifts, share meals and trade stories. Small acts, little gestures, ordinary joy. A voice muttered nearby. It feels different this year, like we did it ourselves. Cerik's lips curved into a sly smile. Good. Exactly the point. For once, the goddess didn't orchestrate, bless, or judge. He watched, laughed quietly at some misfired gifts, and felt the satisfaction of knowing Lumia thrived even without his constant intervention. When the last lights drifted home, and the frost-lit crystals had almost melted, Cerik returned to his quarters. He hung his blindfold over the railing of the vestibule, stretched out on a soft cloud, and muttered to himself. Well, maybe I do deserve a day off. But don't get used to it, universe. One day does not make a goddess submit. And somewhere in the quiet, over the soft shimmer of fading frostlet, Lumia slept peacefully, its goddess, happily, unexpectedly, off duty. It's almost like all work and no play makes you a... Yeah, I got nothing. Anyways, here's your next story. Another Cerik? Is that a proper way of using that word? Who cares? A story about what could have been the very first Christmas of Lumia. The Christmas Conspirators of Lumia. Book number 7. Cerik had always prided himself on knowing his realm. Every light, every ley line, every frostlit crystal that twinkled in the air. And yet, here he was, peering through the doorway of a dimly lit corner cafe in the Grand Square, utterly unprepared for what he was about to discover. A group of lights huddled together, whispering fervently about the first Christmas of Lumia. They were serious, reverent, almost cult-like. They called themselves Yuletide Purists. And apparently, every minor frostlit spill, every misplaced Grand Star Supreme, every small chaotic miracle of the first Christmas had been documented, theorized about, and argued over decades. Cerik's lips twitched. Occultist historians? And I wasn't even invited? He muttered, adjusting his hood. With a swirl of creation, he disguised himself as a small, unassuming light. Shaggy cloak, neutral wings, eyes hidden just enough to avoid recognition. Perfect. He stepped inside. The group barely noticed him at first, too busy debating about exact dimensions. I tell you, the first Christmas was a disaster, one light insisted, flapping his wings dramatically. Frosted crystals fell too early and ruined the decorations. Impossible, countered another. No, it was deliberate. The first light to witness the frosting did so in secrecy, a secret exchange by the goddess. Cerik quietly sipped a steaming mug of spiced nectar, hiding its grin. You people are something else, he whispered to himself. When asked if anyone had eyewitness accounts, Cerik's hand twitched. Could he resist? Of course not. I might know about that first Christmas, he offered humbly, voice low, as if he were just another obsessive historian. It started humbly. A light accidentally knocked over a crate of frosted crystals. They spilled across the cobblestones, and well, somehow that became tradition. Christmas as a whole was completely improvised. The group stared. Some gasped. Some whispered frantically to another. That can't be true, one whispered. No, that's not how the first Christmas could have happened. Cerik suppressed his chuckle. Well, he said, leaning closely. If it were true, it might explain why Frostlit behaves the way it does every year. You know, melting unpredictably when exposed. Purely anecdotal, of course. The purists erupted into debate, waving arms, stomping feet, and scribbling notes in frantic sketches. Cerik sighed, amused. Ah, yes, denial. My favorite response to the truth. As the hours passed, Cerik drops more hints, small observations about the first Christmas. The first decorations, improvised by wing lights who had too much enthusiasm and little sense. The first song? Off-key, out of rhythm, but everyone sang anyway. Enthusiasm over precision. The first shared meal? Some buns caught fire. It was considered a miracle for all to enjoy. By now the group was convinced he was either lying, mad, or some kind of trickster from beyond the stars. Perfect. Just as he wanted. Before slipping away, Cerik left the cloak on the table, his signature blue eyes a smug smirk leaving the room. Cerik hovered, invisibly, outside the cafe, wings tucked, smiling. Some truths, he whispered, voice only carried to the wind, are better hidden, even from a goddess. And with the dash, he vanished, leaving only wonder, debate, and the warm chaos of festive imagination behind. Obviously, this story seems to be a bit far-fetched, but I really do wonder sometimes, what was the first Christmas of Lumia like? It's whatever. Maybe one day we'll find out. At this point, however, I cannot tell if this is an act of narcissism or divine judgment at play. Either way, here's another Cerikdote. One that may be a little silly, because could you imagine a deity as Santa? Book number 8. Cerik's Christmas Promise. The Grand Square of Lumia twinkled with frostlit crystals. each shard casting pale blue light across the bustling streets. The giant Christmas tree at the center gleamed, decorated with glimmering orbs and tiny wisps that floated lazily behind it. The aroma of roasted Grand Star Supremes and spiced nectars drifted through the square, mixing with the crisp air. Parents whispered excitedly to their young lights, "Behave well, and Cerik himself will visit you with a gift of your choosing." The word spread faster than a floss-lit flare. By mid-afternoon, every corner of Lumia buzzed with anticipation. Lights polished their vespures, straightened their wings, and whispered to one another about what they might receive. Mai's voice buzzed softly in Cerik's quarters. "Sir, the lights are, well, taking your Christmas promise very seriously this year." Cerik groaned, slumping into a chair. "He? Playing Santa? Hundreds of lights expecting me too." He gestured vaguely at the city below. "Magically appear with gifts?" He pinched the bridge of his nose, and no one warned me about the small print. Frostlit nights, sugar rushes, and over-enthusiastic celebrations. I suppressed a laugh. "It's all for the spirit of the holiday, you know." "Spirit of the holiday," she says, Cerik muttered. Then, with a resigned sigh, he rose, pulled a red Santa hat onto his head, and adjusted a small cloak around his shoulders. "All right, fine. Let's get this over with." From the top of the rooftops and vestments, Cerik zipped across the grand square. With a flick of his finger, small sacks of gifts materialized practically out of midair. Plushies that giggled when hugged, tiny frost launchers that glimmered softly in the darkness, and so many desired presents. Lights peeked around corners and over parapets, eyes wide with wonder, as Cerik swooped down and gently placed gifts on their vestment with a hearty grin. "Whoa, it's really Cerik!" squeaked a young light, clutching a Cerik plushie. Cerik tilted his head, smirk tugging at his lips. "Shh, secrets, little one. You wouldn't want the others to find out." He twirled a glowing candy bundle with a snap of his fingers, sending it neatly into the hands of another eager light. "There you go. Careful with the frost gun. It's soft, but quite the launcher," he said, knowing this would be chaos for the dormitories. Through the night, he dodged wildly flapping wings, startled wisps, and over-enthusiastic lights. By the time the stars were high and the last gift was delivered, Cerik landed on his quiet vestment, overlooking the grand square, hat slightly askew, cloak dusted with the frostlit shimmer. Dolls, building blocks, frost launchers. I have a newfound appreciation for quiet mornings." He muttered, rubbing his eyes. He leaned back, wings stretching, and let out a long sigh. "And 1 year is more than enough," he added, smirking. "Maybe a second, if I'm feeling charitable or reckless." Down below, the lights chattered excitedly about their gifts, frostlit shards growing faintly amongst Lumia. Stories would be told for years about the night Cerik himself visited, a secret legend passed from one generation to the next. Cerik glanced at the twinkling city, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Enjoy it while it lasts, little lights. 1 year. That's all I owe you." And with that, he vanished into the frosty sky, leaving a grand square aglow with magic, wonder, and the faint laughter of countless lights who truly believed in the goddess's Christmas promise. Hey, I hope you're awake. If not, that's okay. I'll charge extra if you drool on my pillow. Anyways, this is our final story of the night, a realm reflection, if you will. I have but one simple rhetorical question. What makes a good Christmas? Book number 8. When Lumia remembers Christmas. There is a moment each year when Lumia excels. It does not arrive with ceremony, nor does it announce itself with frostlit showers or ringing bells. It happens quietly, between the final rush of the grand square and the soft settling of wings upon the vestments. A moment when the clouds feel warmer beneath one's feet, and the lights across the realm seem to lean closer and closer together. Ask a light when Christmas begins, and you will never, ever receive the same answer twice. In the grand square, says the vendor, wiping her hands on the apron as she closes up shop for the night. It starts when strangers stop haggling and start laughing instead. For me, says the courier, resting along a ley line pulse, wings aching, smile easy. It's when no one's in a hurry, not even the fast ones. A child, barely old enough to control his wings, says it's when the frostlet falls and melts against his gloves. It feels like the sky is being gentle, he explains, as if this requires no further elaboration. In the dormitories, windows glow late into the night. Lights gather not because they must, but because they remember who lives nearby. Doors open that have been closed all year. Names are spoken aloud again. Old stories resurface, slightly warped with retelling, but warmer for it. A light with silver-threaded wings pours an extra cup of nectar and sets it aside. For later, she says, though no one asks who's it for. She does not explain. Along the ley lines, the poles hum softly, carrying not traffic, but song. Someone starts it without thinking, someone else joins in, off-key and unashamed. Frostlit crystals are pulsing faintly in response, as if listening. The lines grow louder, brighter, not from power, but from presence. This, remembers the mechanic watching below, this is why we fix things. Even the wisps linger longer on Christmas. They drift near the edges of gatherings, quiet and respectful, their glow dim but steady. They do not speak, they do not need to. Lights feel them anyway. A pause in conversation, a hand placed over the heart, an extra chair left unclaimed. In Lumia, remembrance is a form of celebration. Not all Christmases are loud. In a small home near Vestview, a light sits alone, staring out at the clouds. No decoration, no guests, just the hum of the realm and the weight of another year survived. When frostlet brushes their window and melts into light, they smile despite themselves. That'll do, they whisper. And it does. If you ask the She Temple what Christmas means, it will offer no doctrine. The halls remain open, lamps low, air still. Lights come and go, not to ask for anything, but to sit, to breathe, to remember that even in a realm built of light, shadows are still allowed to rest. A carved inscription near the entrance reads simply, "To enter is holy, to share is divine." So what is the true meaning of Lumia Christmas? It is not gifts, though gifts are given, not frostlit, though the sky softens for it, not even miracles, though a few always seem to happen anyway. It is the choice, made again and again, to notice one another, to slow one's wings, to leave a light on, to believe that joy does not need provision. And when the realm finally sleeps, clouds dimming and stars settling into their places, Lumia does not ask if Christmas was perfect, only if it was felt. And every year, without fail, the answer drifts back through the clouds like a promise already kept. The end.